I never told my son that I earned $3 million a month. He always thought I was living on a modest pension. When he invited me to dinner with his fiancée's parents, I decided to test them by pretending to be a poor woman who had lost everything. But the moment I stepped through the door, before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The cab's tires whispered over the asphalt as it slowed 2 blocks from the mansion, the driver's eyes flicking to the rearview mirror with the weary patience of a man who'd ferried every stripe of humanity through the city's gilded gates. I counted out the fare in crumpled 20s I'd spent the morning kneading between my fingers until they looked like they'd survived a dozen laundromats, then reached for the door handle. "Keep the change," I said, voice pitched just a shade too grateful. He nodded, popped the trunk, and I hauled out the suitcase. Genuine leather once, now scuffed and sun-bleached, one wheel squeaking like a reprimand with every revolution. Night air slid over my skin, cool and pine-scented, carrying the faint chlorine tang of the fountain I knew waited beyond the gates. I adjusted the frayed strap of my canvas purse, heavy with the weight of a chipped teapot and a stack of mismatched plates I'd collected from thrift bins over the years, and began the walk. My flats scuffed deliberately against the gravel, each step rehearsed in the mirror of my cottage that morning. I'd practiced the hunch in my shoulders, the slight drag of my left foot, the way my fingers worried the hem of the navy dress I'd bought for $5, and then aged another decade with tea stains and careful scissor work. The mansion rose ahead of me, 3 stories of glass and fieldstone, every window glowing like a stage set for someone else's life. I paused at the wrought iron gates, letting the security camera linger on the threadbare cardigan slung over my arm, the silver hair I'd left unbrushed at the temples. A soft buzz, and the gates parted with the hush of money. Gravel became flagstone. Flagstone became marble. The front door opened before I could lift the knocker. Daniel filled the doorway, tie loosened, hair tousled from fingers run through it too many times. 28 years old, and still my boy, though the cedar cologne and the worry lines at his eyes said otherwise. "Mom." The word cracked with relief. He pulled me into a hug that smelled of rosemary bread and the faint metallic edge of nerves. "You're here." I was starting to think the bus broke down again. I patted his back, feeling the tension knotted between his shoulder blades. "Buses always do, sweetheart. But I made it. Wouldn't miss this for the world." He stepped aside, and I crossed the threshold into a foyer vast enough to host a wedding itself. A chandelier the size of a small car dripped crystal over marble veined with gold. A staircase curved upward like a promise, and the air carried the perfume of orchids arranged in a vase taller than I was. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward me, measuring, cataloging. Claire stood beside a pedestal table, radiant in cream silk that caught the light like water. Her smile was warm, but cautious. The smile you give a gift you've been told to cherish but haven't unwrapped yet. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hargrove, rose from a velvet sofa with the synchronized grace of people who'd rehearsed every entrance. Mrs. Hargrove's pearls gleamed as she extended a manicured hand. "Mrs. Ellis, such a pleasure." "Ruth, please." I shook her hand, making sure my palm carried the faint rasp of garden soil I'd rubbed in that morning. "Thank you for having me. I brought dessert." I lifted the Tupperware container, its lid cracked in 3 places, the plastic fogged from the steam of oatmeal cookies I'd baked at dawn, lopsided, one edge charred, the kind of imperfection that whispered, "I tried my best with what I had." Daniel beamed. "Mom's cookies are legendary. She used to make them for my soccer team after every game, win or lose." Claire took the container with both hands, as if it might crumble. "How thoughtful. We'll have them with coffee later." Mrs. Hargrove's smile didn't falter, but her eyes flicked to the container, then to my dress. Navy, faded, hem slightly uneven from a repair I'd done with a safety pin hidden beneath a strategic fold. "Please, come in. Make yourself at home." We moved to the dining room, where a table stretched like a runway beneath a mural of cherubs and vines. Only 5 places were set, each with crystal goblets, silver that caught the candlelight, and napkins folded into perfect swans. I took the chair Daniel pulled out for me, noting how the Hargroves sat opposite, backs ramrod straight, napkins unfolding in identical triangles. The maid, a quiet woman named Sophia, I'd learn later, poured water into my glass with a soft clink that echoed in the hush. Conversation began safely, the way all minefields do. The weather, unseasonably warm for October. The traffic, horrendous on the bridge since the construction. The new sculpture in the town square, abstract, divisive, funded by a tech mogul who'd never set foot in the city. I answered in short sentences, letting my voice waver just enough to sound weary from the bus ride I'd never taken. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. "Mom's been on a fixed pension since Dad passed. She manages, though. Tough as nails." Mrs. Hargrove's eyebrow lifted a fraction. "A pension. How admirable. And you live alone?" "In a little cottage by the lake," I said, folding my hands in my lap. "1 bedroom, creaky floors. The roof leaks when it rains sideways, but the birds keep me company. I feed them every morning, finches, mostly. They know my whistle. I've named the bold one Chester. He steals the sunflower seeds first." Claire's father cleared his throat. "Must be peaceful. Daniel tells us you used to teach piano?" "Years ago." I traced the rim of my water glass with a finger that trembled just enough. "Gave lessons to neighborhood kids for grocery money. Had to sell the piano when the pipes burst last winter. The repairman said it would cost more to fix than it was worth. I still have the bench, though. Use it as a plant stand now." Daniel frowned. He'd never heard that story, but recovered quickly. "Mom doesn't like to complain. She's always been independent. Even when the power went out for 3 days in February, she read by candlelight and never said a word." The first course arrived. Chilled cucumber soup in delicate porcelain bowls, garnished with a single edible flower. I ate slowly, praising the flavor while surreptitiously tucking a rosemary roll into my napkin for later. Mrs. Hargrove watched the motion like a hawk, her spoon pausing midair. Claire tried to draw me out. "Daniel says you quilt. Do you sell them?" I chuckled, a dry sound that scraped my throat. Only if someone takes pity. Mostly I mend clothes for the church bazaar. Thread's expensive these days. I reuse what I can. Old curtains, tablecloths, even the lining from Dad's winter coat after the moths got to it. You'd be surprised what you can make with a little ingenuity and a lot of stubbornness. Mr. Hargrove swirled his wine, the deep red catching the light. Indeed, everything's expensive. He turned to Daniel. Speaking of which, son, have you two settled on a venue? The country club books up 18 months out. We have a membership, could pull some strings. The rose garden in spring is unparalleled. Daniel hesitated. We're still deciding. Mom's input matters too. She's got an eye for beauty in the simple things. Mrs. Hargrove leaned forward, pearls shifting against her collarbone. Ruth, dear, weddings can be scaled to fit any budget. Perhaps something intimate? A backyard ceremony? We have a lovely garden. Roses, hydrangeas, a koi pond with fish older than Claire. I dabbed my lips with a napkin, leaving a faint smudge of lipstick I had applied unevenly on purpose. Backyards are lovely. Mine's mostly dandelions, but wildflowers are free. I let the grass grow long for the bees. They need all the help they can get. Last summer I counted 12 different kinds buzzing around the clover. Claire's smile tightened a fraction. We want whatever makes Daniel happy. The second course arrived. Rack of lamb with rosemary jus, tiny roasted potatoes that glistened like jewels, haricots verts tied with chives into perfect bundles. I waited until everyone was served, then, accidentally, knocked over my water glass. It spread across the linen tablecloth like a small flood, soaking the edge of Mrs. Hargrove's napkin and pooling near the silver candelabra. I gasped, dabbing frantically with my own napkin. Oh goodness, I'm so sorry. These old hands, they don't always do what I tell them. It's fine, Claire said quickly, signaling Sophia, who materialized with towels and a fresh cloth. Mrs. Hargrove's lips thinned, but she waved it off with a gracious smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniel rubbed my back in slow circles. Mom, relax. Accidents happen. Remember when I spilled grape juice on your white couch when I was 10? You just laughed and said it looked like modern art. I let out a watery chuckle. That couch was 20 years old anyway. This tablecloth probably costs more than my monthly grocery budget. The Hargroves exchanged a glance. Quick, loaded, perfect. Dessert was meant to be my cookies, but Mrs. Hargrove waved them away with a delicate hand. We have souffle, chocolate, with a raspberry coulis. Sophia whisked my Tupperware to the kitchen with the efficiency of someone used to disappearing unwanted things. I caught Claire's apologetic glance and gave her a small nod, as if to say, "It's all right, dear." As coffee was poured, espresso in tiny cups with gold rims, Mr. Hargrove steered talk to finances, subtly at first, then less so. Daniel's bonus structure at the firm is quite generous. Claire will want for nothing. We've already set aside a trust for the grandchildren, college, weddings, the works. Daniel shifted in his seat. We'll manage together. Claire's career is taking off too. She just closed a deal that'll put her name on the letterhead by 30. Mrs. Hargrove sipped her espresso, the cup dwarfed by her manicured fingers. Together is key. Blending families requires alignment. Ruth, forgive my candor, but have you considered downsizing further? Perhaps a senior community? Some have lovely meal plans, activities, bridge clubs even. There's one in the hills, gated, with a spa and a theater. We toured it last month. I set my cup down with a clink that seemed to echo forever. I'd miss my garden. The tomatoes are just starting to ripen. Roma, mostly, but I've got a cherry variety that climbs the trellis like it's got ambitions. And the independence, though you're right, every penny counts. My hot water heater's on its last legs. Quote was $2,000. I let my voice crack on the last word, just enough. Might have to shower at the YMCA. They have a senior discount on Tuesdays. The water's lukewarm, but it's better than nothing. Daniel's face flushed crimson. Mom, why didn't you tell me? I could have. You have enough on your plate, sweetheart. Wedding planning, work, keeping Claire happy. I manage. Always have. Claire reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. We could help. Really. It's no trouble. I know a plumber. Friend of a friend. He owes me a favor. Hargrove cut in smoothly, her voice silk over steel. Of course. Family helps family. Though prevention is better than cure. Daniel, perhaps you and Claire could visit some retirement villages together. Research options. We know a lovely place. Views of the valley. A greenhouse for residents who miss their gardens. The evening unraveled from there, thread by thread. Every anecdote I offered was met with pitying nods and swift subject changes. I told them about selling Dad's old watch for grocery money, the one he'd worn every day for 30 years, the one I'd actually locked in a safe behind a false panel in my closet. About skipping the dentist to afford Daniel's college applications, how I'd pulled my own tooth with pliers when the pain got too bad and the bill came due. About the time the electricity was shut off for 3 days in February, and I'd read by candlelight to keep my mind off the cold, how the candles had been birthday gifts from Daniel when he was 12, how I'd saved the stubs in a jar labeled memories. I told them about the flood in the basement 2 springs ago, how I'd lost boxes of Daniel's childhood artwork, how I'd cried over a finger painting of a lopsided sun until the colors ran. The artwork was framed in my private study, behind UV glass. I told them about the winter I'd burned furniture to stay warm, how the old rocking chair had gone up in flames with a sigh. The chair sat in my library, reupholstered in burgundy velvet. Each story was a brick in the wall I was building between us, and they laid the mortar with every sympathetic tilt of the head. By the time we moved to the living room for cordial, the air felt thick as custard. The room was all velvet and mahogany, a fireplace crackling with logs that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Claire showed me wedding magazines thicker than phone books, pointing out gowns that started at 5 figures. Which style do you like, Ruth? The ball gown with the cathedral train? The mermaid with the crystal bodice? I traced a satin train with a trembling finger, letting my nail catch on the glossy page. They're all beautiful. I wore my mother's reworked dress, tea-length, yellowed lace. The hem was frayed, but I sewed on some daisies from the garden. Still have it in a box under the bed. Smells like lavender sachets and the faintest hint of the mothballs I used to keep the mice away. Mrs. Hargrove excused herself to take a call. Through the glass doors, I saw her pacing the terrace, phone to ear, gesturing sharply with her free hand. Mr. Hargrove checked his watch twice, then a third time, the gold face flashing. Sophia cleared the coffee cups with silent efficiency, her eyes flicking to me with something like curiosity. Daniel pulled me aside near the grand piano, sleek, black, a Steinway that probably cost more than my cottage and the lake combined. "Mom, are you okay? You seem fragile tonight, more than usual." I patted his cheek, feeling the stubble he hadn't had time to shave. "Just tired, honey. Long bus ride. And the cottage was cold this morning. The heater's acting up again. I think the pilot light's gone out. I'll have to call someone, but the repairman's booked until next week." His eyes widened. "Bus? I sent a car service. I gave you the number. Black sedan. Driver named Marco." "Canceled it," I whispered, leaning in so only he could hear. "Save the fare for your wedding gift. Every little bit helps. I've been setting aside $5 here, 10 there. It's in a jar labeled Daniel and Claire." He looked stricken, his hand tightening on my arm until I felt the pressure through the cardigan. Claire joined us, looping her arm through his. "We should call it a night. Early day tomorrow, venue tours, cake tastings." The Hargroves reappeared, all smiles again, though Mrs. Hargrove's was tighter than before. She pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, her perfume cloying, jasmine and something sharp. "Ruth, you're welcome any time. We'll find solutions together. Perhaps a small loan to tide you over. Interest-free, of course." I thanked them profusely, gathering my suitcase with the squeaky wheel. At the door, Mrs. Hargrove slipped something into my hand, a crisp $100 bill, folded small and warm from her palm. "For the hot water heater," she murmured, her voice low. "Discreetly. No need to mention it to Daniel." I tucked it into my purse with trembling fingers, letting the canvas flap close with a soft thud. "God bless you. Truly. This means more than you know." Daniel walked me to the waiting cab, the same one, driver dozing with a newspaper over his face, the headline about a tech merger I'd quietly funded. As we pulled away, I watched the mansion shrink in the rear view, lights winking out floor by floor like a stage set after the final curtain. Daniel was silent until we reached the main road, the city lights smearing across the windows. "Mom, I'm sorry. They were condescending, patronizing. I should have shut it down the minute Mom suggested the retirement village." I stared out the window, watching the blur of headlights. "They love Claire. They're protecting her future. It's what parents do. You do the same for your kids one day. They treated you like a charity case, like you were beneath them. The $100. Did you see her face when she thought I wasn't looking? Like she was paying off a beggar." I turned to him then, letting the streetlights flicker across my face in stripes of gold and shadow. "Danny, there's something I need to tell you." He braced himself, hands clenched in his lap, knuckles white. "I haven't been honest. About money." I took a breath, the words heavy after 28 years of silence. Your father's life insurance wasn't 200,000. It was 2 million. And the investments he made before he passed, those engineering patents, the startup he angel funded, they grew. I managed them myself, quietly. Diversified portfolio, tech dividends, commercial real estate, a chain of eco-friendly dry cleaners I bought on a whim because I hated the chemicals in the old ones. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. He looked like a man who'd just been told the sky was optional. What? I earn, well, the portfolio generates about 3 million a month. Passive income, mostly. The cottage? I bought the lake. The land around it? The birds? I installed heated feeders so Chester and his friends never go hungry in winter. The pension story? I thought it kept you grounded, kept us close. No spoiled trust fund kid. No target on your back from people who'd love you for the wrong reasons. The cab slowed at a red light. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, staring at me as if I'd grown a second head and it was reciting stock prices. 3 million a month? You've been pretending to be broke for how long? Since you were 18, when you started asking why we never took vacations, why I drove that old station wagon until it died on the interstate, and I walked 3 miles to the gas station in the rain. I wanted you to earn your way, to know the value of a dollar earned with your own hands, to choose people who loved you, not your bank account. He laughed, a stunned, incredulous sound that echoed in the small space. So tonight, the cookies, the leaky roof, the YMCA showers, the tooth you pulled with pliers, every detail. I smiled, the weight lifting like fog burning off the lake at dawn. The suitcase? Your dad's old one from business trips to Tokyo and Munich. I had it restored just to scuff it up again. The dress? Thrift store, but I paid a seamstress in the city to make it look 20 years older. Faded the dye, distressed the hem, even added a patch under the arm that only shows if you lift it just right. The $100? Going straight to the animal shelter, along with a slightly larger anonymous donation. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting my face as I tapped a few buttons. Just wired them 50,000, in Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove's name. They'll get a lovely plaque at the gala next month, in grateful appreciation of her compassionate support of our furry friends. I had the engraver add a little paw print for flair. Daniel shook his head, grinning despite himself. You're terrifying. Only when necessary, and only for people I love. We rode in silence until the cab turned onto a private drive I'd never shown him, lined with solar lanterns that flickered on as we approached, their warm glow pooling on the pavement like spilled honey. The house rose ahead, timber beams and glass, 3 stories of clean lines and warm light. My housekeeper, Maria, waved from the porch, her apron dusted with flour, a smudge of chocolate on her cheek from the souffle she'd reheated. Daniel stepped out, staring up at the architecture, modern, warm, with a rooftop deck and a telescope pointed at the stars. This is yours? Ours, if you ever need it. I took his arm, leading him inside. The foyer opened to a living room with a fireplace crackling, bookshelves lining the walls from floor to ceiling, a grand piano that dwarfed the Hargroves, a Bosendorfer, black lacquer, keys worn from years of my secret practice at 2 a.m. when the world was quiet. I never stopped playing, just not for an audience. This one's tuned every month by a man who flew in from Vienna. He ran a hand over the keys, the sound rich and resonant, filling the room like water. You lied about selling the piano. I donated one to the community center. Kept this one. The pipes never burst. The roof is slate, imported from Wales. The hot water heater is tankless, heats the whole house in 30 seconds. The basement flood? I staged it with a garden hose and a box of your old crayon drawings I'd scanned and reprinted on watercolor paper. The rocking chair? Reupholstered in burgundy velvet. It's in the library, next to the globe that spins on its own axis. Maria appeared with a tray, sparkling cider in flutes, fresh strawberries glistening with sugar, the oatmeal cookies I'd baked that morning, now arranged on a silver platter with a doily I'd crocheted myself. Welcome home, Mrs. Ellis. And Mr. Daniel. I saved the good ones, the ones without the burnt edges. Daniel took a cookie, biting into it with a groan that echoed his childhood. These are the same, exactly the same. Recipe never changed. I poured cider, the bubbles catching the firelight. To honesty, finally. He clinked his glass against mine. And to the best undercover mom in the world. Oscar-worthy. Later, after he'd explored the library, floor to ceiling, with a rolling ladder and a secret panel that opened to a small cinema, the wine cellar, temperature-controlled, stocked with vintages older than he was, including a bottle from the year he was born, the rooftop deck with its telescope and cushioned loungers piled with blankets, he asked, "What happens now?" Now? I handed him a thick envelope, the paper heavy with possibility. Plane tickets. You and Claire are spending 2 weeks in Tuscany. My wedding gift. Private villa outside Siena. Chef who trained in Florence. Driver who knows every back road. The cottage by the lake is yours to use whenever you need quiet. The boat's gassed up, the dock's new, and there's a hammock between the 2 old oaks that's perfect for naps. And the Hargroves. I smiled slyly, the expression feeling foreign after hours of practiced meekness. Received an invitation to the shelter's gala. Front table. They'll be honored for their generosity. The plaque will be unveiled with a flourish. I had the MC practice the speech. Thanks to Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove's selfless contribution, we've broken ground on a new adoption wing. Flashbulbs, applause, the works. Daniel groaned, laughing so hard he had to lean against the kitchen island. You're evil. Strategic, I corrected, slicing into the soufflé Maria had smuggled out in a cooler. There's a difference. They'll either learn humility or double down on their pride. Either way, Claire will see who they are when the cameras flash and the truth is plated in gold. He hugged me tight, his chin resting on my head like when he was small, and the world was just the 2 of us against everything. I love you, Mom. Broke or billionaire, doesn't matter. I breathed in the scent of cedar and rosemary bread. Maria had baked it fresh, knowing it was his favorite, knowing I'd want the house to smell like childhood. Love you more, kid. Now help me eat this soufflé before it collapses. And try the cider. It's from the orchard I bought last year, the one with the beehives. We sat at the kitchen island, marble, warm under my elbows, laughing over the evening's absurdity. I told him about the tech startup I'd funded anonymously, the one revolutionizing solar panels with a design his father had sketched on a napkin 20 years ago, about the scholarship program in his father's name, how it had sent 12 kids to college this year alone, about the wildlife preserve I'd bought to protect the finches, how Chester and his flock had a heated aviary now, how I watched them on a live feed when I traveled. He told me about Claire's laugh, how it started in her eyes before it reached her mouth, about her habit of stealing his hoodies and wearing them until they smelled like her perfume, about the way she'd defended me when her mother suggested the retirement village, how she'd said, "Ruth's family. We figure it out together. End of discussion." I nodded, throat tight. She's a keeper, smart, kind, and she sees people. Hold on to her. As the fire died to embers and the stars wheeled overhead through the skylight, I felt the last knot in my chest loosen. The test was over. My son had chosen kindness when he thought I had nothing left to give. He'd chosen love over status, loyalty over convenience, integrity over inheritance, and that was worth more than $3 million a month. But the story didn't end there. It never does with family. 3 weeks later, the gala arrived. I watched from the back of the ballroom, dressed in a simple black gown I'd had tailored years ago by a designer who owed me a favor, hair swept up, no jewelry but my wedding ring and a pair of diamond studs I'd bought on a whim in Antwerp. The Hargroves sat at the front table, beaming as the MC, a local news anchor with a voice like velvet, announced their generous donation. Flashbulbs popped. Mrs. Hargrove's smile was tight as she accepted the plaque, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. I raised a glass of sparkling cider in silent toast, the bubbles catching the light like tiny stars. Claire, radiant in emerald silk that matched her eyes, found me near the dessert table laden with cakes shaped like dogs and cats. "Ruth, you look different, glowy." "Cleaner nails," I said, smiling. "No garden dirt tonight, and Maria made me eat something before we left." She laughed, then sobered. "My parents, they're mortified, but also reflective. Mom's been volunteering at the shelter every Tuesday. Dad's matching the donation out of his own pocket. They want to apologize, properly. Dinner next week?" I squeezed her hand. "Let them. People grow when they're uncomfortable. Your Daniel taught me that when he was 8 and tried to hide a broken vase with duct tape." Daniel joined us, tuxedo sharp, eyes bright with something that looked like pride. "Mom, the board just offered me a partnership. Early. Said my integrity in the face of family dynamics impressed them." I arched a brow. "The Hargrove account?" He grinned. "Signed yesterday. Dad's firm is handling their estate planning now. Conflict of interest avoided because I recused myself from the initial pitch. And your firm is underwriting the shelter's new wing. Anonymously, of course." I shrugged. "Finches need a home too. And the new wing will have a piano. For the kids who visit. Maybe one of them will love it the way I did." The music started, a string quartet playing something light and hopeful, a piece I recognized from my own repertoire. Daniel offered Claire his arm, then mine. "Dance with us?" I took his hand, feeling the calluses from his weekend woodworking projects, birdhouses mostly, for the shelter's aviary. Lead the way, kid. As we moved across the floor, the Hargroves watched from their table, faces unreadable. Mrs. Hargrove stood, smoothing her gown, and approached as the song ended. The quartet paused. The room hushed. Ruth. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it, almost shy. May I have the next dance? With your permission, Daniel. He nodded, stepping back with Claire, his hand lingering on her waist. Mrs. Hargrove took my hand, her grip firm but not crushing. I was wrong. About everything. You're not what I assumed. None of this is. I smiled. None of us are, Eleanor. Not until we're tested. And even then, we surprise ourselves. She glanced at the plaque on the table, now joined by a check for another $50,000. The wing, the piano, that was you. A thank you for the $100, compound interest, and for the lesson in humility. It's priceless. She laughed, a real one this time, her pearls shaking. Will you let us make it right? Dinner, our treat. No condescension, no retirement village brochures. I considered, tilting my head. Bring your checkbook. The shelter needs a new kennel, and I know a plumber who owes Claire a favor. Done. And Ruth, the cottage by the lake. May we visit? I'd love to see your tomatoes. I squeezed her hand. Bring gardening gloves. The soil's rich, but the weeds are stubborn. As the quartet struck up a waltz, I let her lead. The room spun. Crystal chandeliers, laughter, the scent of roses and possibility. Daniel and Claire danced nearby, her head on his shoulder, his hand steady on her back. Mr. Hargrove joined us midway through, tapping his wife's shoulder with a sheepish grin. May I cut in? I believe I owe Ruth an apology, too. I stepped into his arms, lighter than I'd felt in years. Start with the kennel, Charles. Then we'll talk. Later, driving home under a sky full of stars, I rolled down the window and let the wind tangle my hair. The cottage by the lake waited, small, perfect, mine, with its creaky floors and finch feeders. But so did the mansion, the villa in Tuscany, the preserve with its heated aviary. I had everything, and nothing left to prove. The test was over. The story was just beginning. And somewhere, Chester the finch was stealing sunflower seeds under a heated roof, dreaming bird dreams of endless summer.